Okay, thanks, Ryan. For those that don't know me, my name is Nick Sharp. I'm the non-game biologist for North Alabama for Alabama Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries. Non-game means I deal with reptiles, amphibians, birds, and small mammals, and I jokingly call that my job rats, bats, and skunks. I spend a lot of time with bats, and so I'll be speaking about bats today. I have really just three simple goals for my talk today. First, I want to convince you that bats are important. And then secondly, I want to bring some awareness of bats in forest and specifically bat roosts in forest. And then provide some tips at the end to help you minimize harm of prescribed fire to bats and improve forest conditions for bats. So this is a video that was taken in Talladega National Forest. This is a roost of southeastern bats. And like I said, really my intent today is just to make you aware that this kind of thing is going on in our forest. And I could summarize my whole talk by saying, try not to burn this up. Really neat video. So why should we care about bats? A single bat can eat over 1,000 insects per night. And we have 15 species of bats in Alabama. They're all insectivores. So bats in Alabama are eating billions of insects every night. And there was a study done in 2011 that concluded that this pest control service is worth at least $4 billion to our agricultural economy every year in the United States. And another study found that bats are worth $1 billion to the global corn crop alone. And if you think about it, corn is in everything we eat. You look at any food label, you'll see corn. Just for fun, I listed all the various forms of corn that you can find on a food label there. And we feed our livestock corn. So some of you may have heard me say this before, but if you like to eat food, you should think of bat. You think about that number 4 billion, and that's a sobering number. But that number becomes alarming when you learn that more than half of the bat species in the United States are thought to be in decline. Several are endangered. Losses of bats are occurring at alarming rates worldwide. And now bats in North America are facing unprecedented population declines due to an introduced fungus that infects hibernating bats. You guys have probably heard of this, white nose syndrome. It's named after the white fungal growth on the muzzle, ears, wings of bats. And it's killed over 7 million bats in North America since 2007, and that number is old. I'm sure it's higher than that now. You take that in conjunction with the colony collapse disease of our honeybees and the loss of our other pollinators, and you're really looking at a food security issue. So that's why I think bats are important. We have 2 species of bats that roost in trees in the summer that are protected under the Endangered Species Act, the Indiana bat and the northern long-eared bat. And now we have a third one that is under review for listing under the ESA. And the colors on these maps show you where they occur in the state. The tricolored bat occurs statewide. We also have 10 species of bats that are state protected. So knowing that bats are a benefit to us, but they're in trouble, how can we support bats? Almost all of our bats in North America rely on forests for survival. They use forests for food, water, and shelter. And I'm sure many of you have seen this infographic before, but in Alabama, 70% of our 70% of Alabama is covered in forest, and of that, 94% of it is privately owned. So forest landowners play an important role in the stewardship of our forests for bats. So let's look at how bats use the forest. Again, really what I'm trying to do here today is just bring some awareness to bat roosts in the forest and how they use the forest. So these are basal hollows that are used by southeastern bats, just like the video. These are Indiana bat roost trees. They like to roost under the exfoliating bark of trees. And you know, like on a pine snag, on that dead bark begins to slough off in sheets, and they like to get up under that. These are roosts of northern long-eared bats in the Talladega National Forest, similar to the Indiana bat, but these are also Indiana or northern long-eared bat roosts. They're quite versatile, and they can use any kind of crevice, cavity, or knot, even in the center photo, a slash pile. Not all our bats roost inside of trees. Some are foliage roosters, so that you can see that in the left-hand photo, this Seminole bat looks like a pine cone. They're very cryptic, and a lot of times you wouldn't even notice that they're there. Similarly, we have the yellow bat in South Alabama. They like to roost in Spanish moss. We have the red bat, which likes to roost in a clump of dead trees. Can you guys see the bat there? He's hanging at the bottom of the photograph. You would walk right by this and never notice it. So some of our bats roost in trees throughout the year. Some of them in the winter migrate south, which is here. Some go to caves to hibernate, but red bats hibernate under the leaf litter. So that's another thing you got to look out for. So you can see there's a variety of ways that bats find shelter in the forest. Other thing bats use the forest for is water. They'll use pools of standing water to drink from. They drink on the wing, so they'll swoop down and get a drink. It doesn't have to be as scenic as this little creek here. They'll use puddles in road ruts just as well. And then I touched on this already, but the third reason bats use forest is for food. So they are the only major predator of night flying insects that cause crop damage. I just got in a recent study from the University of Florida that included looking at bats in South Alabama, and they found 23 species of agricultural pests in bats' diets, including some of the pests that cause the most severe economic damage. Okay, so we've seen why bats are important and how they use the forest. Prescribed fire can improve forest conditions for bats. It can reduce the understory and midstory clutter, which improves foraging conditions by making it easier for bats to fly. It can create a greater number of large, high-quality snags and basal cavities that, as we've seen bats use for roosting. And then the open understory can increase production of insect prey for the bat. So this is just to look at again a couple of roosts that bats use, and you can see the open understory, open conditions that the bats prefer for foraging. Right, so beneficial management practices for bats. What can we do to support them? When bats are born, they cannot fly for about the first month. And So young bats are particularly vulnerable to fire since they can't fly to escape. So if possible, the best thing to do is avoid burning during the pup season, which is May 1st to July 31st. Not all our bats roost solitarily like this red bat. Some roost in large maternity colonies where the females congregate to give birth and raise young. So on the left, this is that same tree from the video. And if you look, you can see some baby bats that are exposed, and these guys would likely be killed by an intense fire. So if you can't avoid burning during the pupping season, then you can follow some guidelines to avoid killing bats. And that simply is reduce fire intensity. Use the wind to transfer heat across the stand instead of vertically, so heat's not rising and cooking the bats in their roost. Choose days with low humidity and light winds, and use backing fires. You guys know this stuff. That's what you would do for reduced fire intensity. And then protect those large snags by raking it around them down to bare soil. All right, during the winter season, bats are dormant. So you give them a chance to warm up and fly so they can escape the fire. So that means don't burn when it's below freezing overnight, and choose daytime temperatures above 50. Bats will fly about 45 to 50 degrees. Below that, they don't fly. And likewise, you can, delay your start time a little bit to late morning and afternoon to, again, give these guys a chance to warm up. Just so remember our red bat here in the leaf litter. During the winter is the best time to remove hazard trees and construct fire lines, because you reduce the chances of removing an occupied roost tree, because a lot of the bats have gone into hibernation and there's no maternity colonies that during that time of year. And then considers caves as smoke sensitive areas during prescribed burns, because again, the bats are down there hibernating, so keep the smoke out of the caves. And then just to broaden out just a little bit, there are additional best management practices available for timber harvest for bats. And again, if you can avoid taking trees down when the young bats may be in them, that's the best policy, May 1st to July 15th. Retain the largest trees out there, or at least some of them for the bats. Retain the trees with the exfoliating bark like shagbark hickory and white oak. Trees with cavities and basal openings, like I've shown you here today, the ones that bats are using. Retain all snags if you can. If you're dealing with an area with continuous canopy cover, it's okay to create small forced openings to let the sunlight hit the ground for the reasons we discussed, forage and for the forage and flight ways for bats. And with reference to the water that they use, protect and maintain riparian areas and water sources. So that's just a quick rundown. There's additional resources available out there if you want more information. The NRCS has put out some guide sheets on management for bats, one on prescribed fire, one on tree removal, one on hibernacula. There's a couple good documents available out there on the internet you can find just by Googling these titles here. One by the Forest Service is really good. And feel free to contact me or Shannon Holbrook with Fish and Wildlife Service, or Jeff Thurman with NRCS for more information and details. All right, Ryan, that's it.
Thank you, Nick. All right, I think I have time for one quick question. It's from Stivers. What's being done to mitigate white nose syndrome?
That's a tough one. They've been throwing millions of dollars at it research, trying to come up with a cure, and so far there's not a whole lot to show for it, unfortunately. So it's difficult to mitigate for. The bats are spreading it amongst themselves from cave to cave. We folks that frequent caves do our best to sanitize and decontaminate our gear. But it's made it all the way. It's made it all the way to Washington State now, and it showed up, I think, recently in Wyoming or Montana. I don't recall which. So it's in Texas. So unfortunately, not a whole lot that we can do at this point.